contract standing orders, procurement and fee setting, a new member training induction programme which is being developed for post-election training, establishment of a training matrix for senior officers in respect of corporate governance, the establishment of an officer group for the delivery of the carbon management strategy, the tracking of audit recommendations through the Council's performance monitoring system, Pentana, the tracking of equality framework actions through the same system, Pentana, the establishment most recently of a corporate management team to support the senior leadership team in strengthening governance throughout the organisation, and the delivery of community outreach sessions in the borough to improve engagement with our residents. Changes to the code also identify work which will be undertaken in 2023-24. This includes a review of the Members' Code of Conduct and arrangements for dealing with complaints, a review of the Gifts and Hospitality Code of Practice, as well as preparation of a procurement strategy and a fees and charges strategy. It's recommended that the committee approves the amended Local Code of Corporate Governance for 2023-24. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fran. Would you like to just comment on, because there are different colours in some of these amendments, is there any particular reason? Some are in blue, some are in purple and some are in red.
Yeah, they've been made by different people because the review was undertaken with SLT and heads of service. They've all contributed to make sure that any actions within their particular service areas are included in the plan.
Thank you. I'll move approval from the chair. Is that seconded? Councillor Clooney, thank you. Does anyone want to make any comments on this? If not, well, you can see that there has been a lot of work done, and obviously once it's approved and we get the consolidated report, but it is something I think that people ought to continue to look at. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amended, sorry, not the amended, the Local Code of Corporate Governance for 2023-24. All those in favour? Any against? Oh, I forgot to put my hand up. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is accounting policies 2022-2023. Alison.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, this report presents the proposed accounting policies to be applied in the production of the 22-23 Statement of Accounts, presented here for your consideration and approval tonight. So the Council's accounting policies provide the rules and conventions which are designed to comply with the requirements of the Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting and International Financial Reporting Standards. These ensure consistency between and enable the effective comparison of all accounting statements and support the aggregation of the whole of government accounts produced by central government. The policies provide the framework for the preparation of the statement of accounts. For example, how we'll record day-to-day transactions, how we'll measure our assets and liabilities, for example, property, plant and equipment and pensions. The accounting policies must be disclosed to enable the reader of the statements to interpret the financial position presented. So the proposed policies are detailed in Appendix 1. I can confirm that there are no material changes arising from the 22-23 Code of Practice affecting Gedling that require any amendment of accounting policies, and therefore they remain the same in substance as those that the committee approved for 21-22 Statement of Accounts in March of last year, and also for the prior year, 2021. So whilst the auditor hasn't yet finalised the audit of the 21-22 financial statements, the prior year did receive an unqualified audit opinion, and therefore this indicates that the policies are compliant and consistent with the requirements of the code. So I'll leave it there, Chair. The recommendations are set out on page 29.
Right. Thank you. I'll move that members approve the accounting policies 2022-23 as set out in the appendix for application to the final statements in respect of 2022-23. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Is there any debate? Well, we must be all very happy with these, which is good to know. In that case, all those in favour? That again is unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Internal Audit Annual Plan 2023-24. And I'll hand over to Charlotte Thomas, who is I had it here a minute ago. Too many bits of paper.
Audit Manager.
I wanted to get it right, yes. Internal Audit Director, it says. Have you been promoted?
Oh, no. That's Gurpreet, my colleague, who's also on the line, but I'm the manager.
Thank you, Charlotte.
So thank you, Chair. Yes, ahead of each audit year, we prepare our plan of internal audit work, and the document starting on page 55 of your packs sets this out. So I'm proposing this plan tonight for your approval, along with the Internal Audit Charter. The document sets out a number of things. We are obliged to produce a 3-year plan, so you can see the proposed audit for future years on page 60 of the pack. But the key thing really I want to draw your attention to tonight is the detailed 23-24 plan on page 63, which sets the audits for the upcoming financial year. We developed the plan using our knowledge of the sector and having consulted with heads of service and also engaged with SLT. So at the point of coming to you tonight, the document has been through management, and critically, the areas we've identified for audit are based on the Council's risk register. So you can see the plan includes a mix of areas. We do main financial systems every year as a core review. We've also got the critical area of council tax and business rates. You can see there's a wider review around governance, risk and budgetary assurance mapping. On the following pages, we also cover key areas such as safeguarding, project and programme management, GDPR, and then later on there's wider areas of challenge such as how do you generate external income, how the council is working with the NHS on community health and wellbeing, and gaining assurance over its leisure arrangements, and health and safety too. So I'll pause here and take any questions you may have on the plan.
Anybody have any questions? If not, I move. I'm sorry, Councillor Elwood.
It's all right. Yeah, just looking at, I probably should know this, but page 63, main financial systems, you're going to be reviewing the general ledger, accounts payable and accounts receivable. Presumably the external auditors would be looking at that as well, would they? Would there be some convergence of work or cooperation between what you do?
Yeah, definitely. If there's any issues that the scope of the audit closer to the time gets more defined, we just put in a general holding sort of description for the review in this plan. But obviously, if anything comes to light that we need to look more closely at as a result of conversations with external audit, then we would be looking at that as well.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I will move. Sorry.
Sorry, the only other thing to add is the Appendix 1 is the Internal Audit Charter, so I'm also asking for approval on that document. What that does is sets out how BDO as a company complies with the public sector internal audit standards. So it's our approach to ethics, confidentiality, all those kind of issues. And it's nothing substantial has changed from the one that you approved last year, but I'm just required to ask you to approve that again.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'll move that we receive the report and note it. No, that's the wrong one. I'll move that members approve the internal audit plan 2023/24 to 2025/26. That's seconded. Thank you, Councillor Pearson. All those in favour? Any against? That again is unanimous. Would that every meeting we had of the council was unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to the internal audit progress report. And over to you, Charlotte, again.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have finalised 3 reviews since we last met, remote working, contract management and procurement, and cybersecurity. Obviously, due to the nature of the topic of cybersecurity, we'll discuss that later as an exempt item. But in the progress report you've got starting on page 77, you can see where we're at with everything. So we have finalised contract management procurement. That's from the 21-22 plan. So now everything from 21-22 is finished. And in terms of 22-23, we have finalised half of the year's reports. There are 2 audits that are near completion, which are business continuity and emergency planning and workforce strategy, and the rest of the audits are due to start imminently. These remaining audits we plan to bring to the June committee, which is also when we bring our annual internal audit opinion. So our plan will have concluded in time for that. So I'll just talk through the reviews themselves. So remote working. In light of COVID, obviously there's been an increase in remote working. So we undertook a review looking at what controls the council has in place over this with respect to health and safety and security controls. We reviewed policies and procedures, staff survey results. We tested a sample of staff to check they'd had the correct DSE self-assessment forms and appropriate equipment and technology to empower them to do their jobs effectively and safely. And we also looked at how the IT team monitors tech and mobile phone usage. Overall, we gave a substantial opinion on the design of controls and a moderate one on the effectiveness of those controls. We raised 3 findings, only 1 medium and 2 low. So there was lots of good practice in terms of there are programs in place to monitor the technology issued to employees and to check that employees are upgrading their phones with software updates or changing their passwords. There's a clear DSE policy in place. The results of the staff survey were reported up to the Joint Consultative and Safety Committee and SLT and discussed effectively with recommendations for solutions. And we also confirmed that when people leave the council, there is a secure disposal arrangement process in place for laptops and phones, which are wiped and handed back, etc. So the 1 medium finding related to the testing of staff members for their self-assessment forms for display screen equipment. We found that 3 in 10 of the staff members tested, we couldn't obtain those forms. In 2 cases, that was because the manager had changed and they just hadn't had the handover from the previous manager. So there was only in 1 case where a form wasn't completed. And I guess the risk is that if you don't retain or complete these, then can the authority really say they have ensured that their staff are supported to work in a safe way at home? But obviously there are other mitigating controls. Generally if staff are struggling, they will speak up and ask for help. So we only deem this a medium risk and overall a really positive review. So moving on to the next review, which is contract management and procurement. So this looked at the policies and controls in place around these areas. The council has an SLA with Bolsover so it has an outsourced procurement team. We tested a sample of procurements to check they were processed in accordance with procurement rules. And we also looked at the SLA itself to see what assurance the council was getting about the performance of that contract. And then we also looked at contract management of the sampled procurements and tested a sample of them for evidence of regular meetings and reports, etc. We provided a limited moderate opinion and raised 1 high and 4 medium findings. And you have the full report in the pack, so I'll just highlight 3 key issues. The first is around the contract management arrangements not being up to standard. The contracts tested didn't have formal contract management arrangements in place, and in terms of regular contract meetings and regular reporting, and only 2 contracts stipulated KPIs within the contract. So we deemed this a high finding. Secondly, around the monitoring of the contracts register, there was a limited process to identify contracts that are approaching their end date, indicating a more reactive process, which may not always mean the council achieves value for money, although obviously that is just based on our sample testing of 10 contracts. And also there wasn't clear management of the procurement SLA, checking that Bolsover was actually meeting the KPIs in that contract, such as maintaining and publishing the contracts register, producing management reports. So those are the ones I really want to draw your attention to. There was also a finding about the contract register not being fully updated and published. However, pleased to say that the council has already implemented the recommendations on this. And so while it's a limited opinion in design, we have seen progress already, and we'll continue to follow up to ensure the rest of the recommendations are completed. But there is a moderate on effectiveness and what's driving that is we didn't find any major findings in terms of breaching procurement rules or anything like that, and there were contracts in place, so a medium effectiveness. And yeah, that's the progress report for now, and we'll come to cybersecurity later. So.
Thank you, Charlotte. Are there, yes, Councillor Barnes and Councillor Pearson.
Thank you very much. Charlotte, can I just ask, is it going to stay at 40% of the week for staff coming in, or is it going to be a longer period as time goes on?
Perhaps I can pick that up, Sandra. So that 40% was set as a trial for a year. So the Chief Executive's planning to do a review of that this year. So that will be happening imminently.
Much. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Hello there. Yes, just to ask whether we have extended the SLA agreement with Bolsover. I think it's due to expire at the end of this month.
Yes, I can confirm we've extended it for this year. We've got another option to extend for a further year, but we'll keep that under review depending on performance.
Yes, Councillor Greensmith.
I just wanted to ask, are the contracts held here at Gedling or are they at Bolsover? It's not very clear. I know there's a tie-up with Bolsover Council, but I just was unsure how the mechanics of it were and who is responsible for the areas that Charlotte mentioned. Was that Gedling or was that supposed to be Bolsover? Because obviously I appreciate there's the 2 councils are involved.
Yeah, so Bolsover effectively provide the support service.
Sorry,
for
I
us
can't
in
hear
terms,
you.
So Bolsover provide the support service for us in terms of administering the procurement process, but we hold the contracts here at Gedling.
No other questions or comments? If not, I'd like to thank Charlotte for her work and note the actions have been taken. So I'll move that members receive the report and to note actions taken or to be taken. Is that seconded? Councillor Pearson or Councillor Clooney, one or the other. All those in favour? That again is unanimous. Thank you. Corporate Risk Management Scorecard, Q3, 2022-23. Alison?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, this report presents our usual quarterly update for members on the current level of assurance that can be provided against each of the Council's 13 corporate risks. This is a Q3 report for the period ending December 2022. Of the 13 corporate risks, there are 4 changes to the current risk level this quarter, with 1 improving risk and 3 deteriorating risks since quarter 2, providing an overall downward direction of travel. The improving risk is risk 1, so that's failure to prevent the budget from overheating, on page 133 of the report. This improvement reflects the latest budget monitoring position, which was reported to Cabinet in January, which after a period of increased risks due to inflationary pressures, we reported the latest projected position of an underspend. And whilst those risks are not reduced back to target level, the likelihood of the budget overheating at this stage in the year is much reduced. In terms of finances, also just to remind you, at risk 2, failure to maintain financial integrity, it is worth noting that whilst the overall risk level remains unchanged, following the local government finance settlement, this remains our highest overall risk, measured as a red risk, and the risk to our sustainability and plans to address them were fully set out in the budget report to Council on the 2nd of March. In terms of the escalating risks, these include risk 3 on page 135. That covers our health and safety of our staff, with a move into the amber rating from green, and that's due to the findings of our newly appointed health and safety team in their recent inspections and review of risk assessments. Work will continue to determine the corporate-wide position on risk and will work to address those findings of those inspection reports. Risk 8, failure of contract arrangements on page 141 is escalated this quarter to within the amber risk assessments to reflect the high risk internal audit recommendation that Charlotte's just spoken to us about, and the limited assurance in respect of our contract management arrangements. So we will work to address those recommendations, have all been accepted. So we'll work to mitigate those risks, including the development of contract management guidance. And finally, we've got an increased risk at risk 12 on page 145. That's failure to react to an incident of a malicious act, again increasing within the amber assessment overall. That relates to our planned provision of emergency planning support via Notts County Council. That's now not possible as the county have not been able to recruit appropriate staff. So that does leave a little bit of a gap for us at the moment, and a reliance on our new health and safety and emergency planning team, who are still being developed into this aspect of the role. So work is, though, progressing, and the development of business continuity plans covering all risks across the council is going to be delivered through managed workshops. So whilst no change to risk level at risk 9, it is worth noting, against the inability to defend legal challenges, that you'll recall in our annual governance statement an emerging risk regarding potential non-compliance with requirements in respect of taxi licence fee setting. As set out on page 142, I can confirm that review has now been completed, and the outcome was reported to Environment and Licensing Committee in January. The review did find an error in the administration of taxi licence fee setting, which are required to be limited to cost recovery by licence type. That resulted in an overcharge on vehicle and operator licences, which will now be refunded, with Cabinet approving the budget for that in January. Can confirm a new methodology has been developed for future fee setting, therefore mitigating the risk. And we have included a review in the internal audit plan in terms of the new fees and charges strategy, which will be developed next year as well. So I'll leave it there, Chair. Our recommendations are on page 131.
Thank you. Although there are 1 or 2 change risks, it's good to know that the budget won't be overheating.
Let's hope not.
Anybody got any questions or comments? If not, I will move from the chair that members note the progress of actions identified within the corporate risk register. Is that seconded? Councillor Pearson, thank you. All those in favour? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, we now welcome Mark Surridge from BDO. Sorry, from the ZARS. Yes, I can see where he is. I was just wondering whether there was a seat up here he could come to. Would you like to come up and... No, I could see him. He's not that far away. I just thought it'd be better if he'd come up here. This is agenda item 9, which is Mazza's External Audit 2021-22 Progress Report. So I will now hand over to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here today. You have a progress report from Mazars, slightly longer progress report than you'd normally get, but part of that is an introduction to me. I am taking over from David Hughes, who was your engagement lead before. David is moving into another part of the business, and we just thought, actually, this is the right time. Might as well introduce myself, pick up the audit with the rest of the team. The very short background from me is I've been doing public sector audit for about 20 years now. I'm engagement lead on 17 local authorities across the East Midlands, including, I think, all of the Nottinghamshire districts now. So that just gives me a bit of a local context and understanding of where things are at. The progress report itself, as you're aware, is essentially the work is on hold for a short period. We substantially completed most of the work on the financial statements, but the incident that has occurred meant that we just put a pause because we need to make sure that had run its course before we revisit the work that we need to do in order to issue the opinion. Specifically, it's about making sure we don't duplicate anything and don't override anything that was ongoing at the time. We've reorganised our staffing to make sure that we can come back at the right time to finish off the work, and we will do that in the next few months. I think we're penned in for the summer to come off and close off the 21-22 audit. The consequence of that is obviously that we then have to roll through because you're about to hit your March 23 year end, so that will roll through, but we have been appointed as your auditors from 23-24 onwards, which just gives us that roll forward of continuity in order to make sure that we see everything through cleanly and appropriately. The other part of our responsibilities, aside from the financial statements, of which I should say, in order to make sure we address our procedures correctly, and we've had a number of early conversations with officers on this, is that we will have to go back and revisit whether our audit strategy was right and appropriate at the time. At this point, I don't think we'll change our approach substantially, but we will increase the amount of testing that we do. But I don't see any new financial reporting risks arising as a result of this. It's just how we tackle that, to which we will probably bring you back as a committee a revised audit plan to show you exactly how our thought processes have come together about addressing everything that we need to address. The secondary area of our responsibilities does sit around what's called, very ironically, most people call it the value for money conclusion. I always say it's not actually a value for money conclusion, I'm ever so sorry. But we have responsibilities to look at arrangements that are in place over economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And those are things like looking at your financial planning procedures, looking at governance and risk management, like the risk register update that you've just had, and also looking at partnership working. And we're required to comment on those. As part of the work, if we identify something that's called a risk, so I need to be very clear about what I'm saying here, a risk that those arrangements might not be operating effectively, then we are required to flag that to you and say we are going to do a deeper dive on that. So within the report, I think it's in section 3, what we are saying is we are going to do a deeper dive around at this point we still are calling it an allegation of fraud. We will do a deeper dive on that, but we will draw from existing work wherever possible. So we know bits and pieces are going on, and we will draw from that rather than not duplicate. But we will come back to it and reach what we call a commentary, and we'll report back on that as a specific matter. I will, and I think that's about all I would say at this point, but I'm absolutely always welcome to take any questions about anything that's in this report, anything that's wider than that, or anything, well, no, not anything you want, but anything that is focused around this.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome. It is in the public domain that there has been a fraud, but obviously we can't talk about what it involves until the investigation has finished. Does anybody have any questions or comments to Mark? If not, oh, sorry, Councillor Greensmith.
I've just got a couple of queries. It's a fair few years since I did audit, so I'm not 100% certain. Obviously, at the moment, we can't sign off the 21-22 audit report, and we're now going to go into, shortly, the 22-23. So are we likely to end up not being able to sign any of the accounts off if this police investigation carries on longer than anticipated?
I'm going to caveat my answer a little bit because to an extent there's a matter of what do we find. As it stands, what I currently believe is that I believe that the time that we've set aside to complete the 21-22 accounts, I'm just going to say in the summer, will run its course and enable us to conclude on time. Then rolling into 22-23 and then 23-24. So there's going to be a catch-up, and the cycle will be behind for a while, but we will catch up. I'd like to say this calendar year.
Did you have another question?
Question will be, oh, thank you, are you, I suppose you don't know the answer, will you have to qualify the audit report based on this, but until you know the police outcome, you probably can't answer that question. What's your thought processes at the current time, if you've got any?
Specifically, I'll say no comment.
Okay.
But what I will say is, obviously, we have a procedure in place. So I have consulted internally with my teams about what procedures I think we need to conduct, which will inform an audit plan. We'll then execute those procedures and then use those to conclude on where we're at. What that conclusion will be until we do the work.
Your enhanced, if I can say that, audit plan, you will bring back to this committee so we can review it and
Correct.
Look at it. Fine.
You will see a plan of what I believe is necessary to get to a conclusion,
albeit
whatever that conclusion will be.
Yep, fine.
Which that gives me enough wiggle room to say I need to do some work first.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I will move that we note the Mazars External Audit 2021-22 Progress Report. Is that seconded? Councillor Pearson, thank you. All those in favour? Again, that is unanimity has broken out. This item is exempt, and we need to move a resolution to exclude the public and press. But before we do, I'd like Fran to actually tell us exactly why we're doing this.
I think it might be one for Alison, actually, this one.
For the purposes of the live stream.
Yeah, so the motion is to exclude the public and press. Obviously, this item is exempted. The reason it's exempted is because it contains information about our cybersecurity systems. So disclosure of that information in the public domain could lead to a risk of, well, cyber attack potentially. So excluded on the basis of it provides details of our business activities and also to prevent potential criminal actions. So that's the reason that the contents of the report are not read out in the public domain. And the motion, which the Chair will shortly put, just details why as well, in terms of the legislative framework.
Thank you. I'm sure we're all aware, and hopefully the two people who watch this are also aware. I'm going to move that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the ensuing report on the grounds that the report involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 7 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Is that seconded? I'm going to take Councillor Clooney this time. Thank you. Is the live stream now off?
We have to have a vote.
Pardon? Oh, yes, we have to vote on it. All those in favour? Thank you. Once again, unanimous. And now the live stream should be cut.